This month of reading can pretty much be summed up as self-help books and classical Russian literature. But to be honest, nothing screams January quite like that. It's fine, I'm embracing the cold, dark and miserable UK in the best way I can. So in this video, I'm going to be recapping the books I read in January, what I rated them out of 10, and give you a bit of my thoughts about them. I'm Kat, by the way, welcome to the channel. Alrighty, let's get into it. Okay, so for book one, not only was it the first book I read in 2024, but it was also the first Dostoevsky book I have ever read. And it's White Nights by Fyodor Dostoevsky. And let me tell you, I cannot believe I've never read his work before because his writing style is so good. The story is set in St. Petersburg, Russia, and the tale follows a young man who is fighting this loneliness and also this restlessness that comes from said loneliness. He's introverted, shy, and also quite a daydreamer, which to be honest is something I can relate to. But he lives in this self-pitying solitude until one day he meets a girl. This girl is also lonely, but for different reasons, and after a few conversations with each other, they believe that they found a solid connection with each other. However, this is not a love story, it's a story about love, and more specifically about unrequited love and yearning. And I gave this book 7 out of 10. So this book is actually more of a novella because it's only 82 pages long. And don't let the fact that this was published in 1848 put you off from reading it, because it is such a gorgeous story of unrequited love and yearning that I think that most people can honestly relate to. But what makes this book so devastating is that not only is this loneliness of love that brings these two characters together, you realise that this romanticism in a realist world isn't meant to last. Which makes it a beautiful read at the start because you have this sense of hope and yearning for both of these characters. But you're later crushed and shattered when you realise that this love isn't meant to be between them. It almost feels like the right person at the wrong time sort of trope. And this book has so many beautiful quotes in it that I honestly was like underlining almost every single page. I'll read you some of the quotes that really stuck with me. The first one is, "We thank some people for merely living at the same time as we do. I thank you for the fact that I met you, that I will remember you for all my life." And another one I really loved was, "If you ever fall in love, may God grant you happiness with her, but I won't wish her anything because she will be happy with you." Like, sorry, me and who? When will the universe send me someone like that? Because honestly, I need someone to be this obsessed with me. There were not many things I disliked about this book at all. Probably the only things, which is more of like a personal thing with me, is that I did find the book hard to read at times. But this is most likely because the book is a product of its time and the writing was a lot more like old-fashioned back then. But the only other things that annoyed me was that like the character is just like such a wet lettuce at times. It's kind of just a bit like, come on bro, like stop wallowing in your self-pity and you know, life's not that bad, you're not that lonely. Like he victim blames himself a lot throughout the book. He's like, oh, why doesn't no one like me? Why am I so lonely? Which, you know, I'm sure we all have thoughts like that, but it was just kind of annoying to read it over and over again. So that was my only little tidbit with this book. But overall, I really loved it. And for something so short, only 82 pages, it's definitely something I would recommend for people to read. Now, this year I set a few New Year's resolutions on improving my health and more particularly my diet, so I really wanted to read some books that help my nutrition. So the second book I read this month was Why We Eat Too Much by Jenkinson. So the author of this book is actually a doctor, and in using 20 years of research with overweight patients, he examines how Western diet impacts our appetite and our metabolism, ultimately exhibiting why current nutrition affects our weight gain, our weight loss, and why these modern fad diets don't actually work. This book was actually super interesting and informative, so I'm going to actually give this an 8 out of 10. I would like to mention that this isn't necessarily a diet book, like it won't give you any groundbreaking secrets on how much to lose weight quick, but it's more of a book on nutrition and how to improve your diet in the long term, which is more sustainable. And it teaches you how to eat best for your body, which in the long term can help you lose weight and actually keeping this weight off, which I think we can all agree is a lot more healthier for our body than doing these crash diets to lose weight quickly. It really turned around the perception I have of dieting in my mind, especially when it comes to counting calories. This book kind of debunks the whole counting calories theory and shows that it actually is more to do with the types of food you eat, which kind of sounds simple, but it's little things like fat's actually good for you, even though the food industry has kind of demonized it, whereas it's sugar that's actually the culprit that makes you gain weight, and similar advice like that. And he backs all of his findings by various pieces of research and several studies, which really cements what he's saying a lot more. Another thing I really liked about this book is that a lot of science books can be very technical technical and hard for lay people like me to understand, because they tend to have so much medical jargon that if you didn't really understand like the basics of it, or it's hard to then understand then, or it becomes really dry and hard to read. But this book was actually super easy to understand, and it was interesting, that kept me engaged and wanting to read more. My only bugbear with this book, and the reason I didn't give it 10 out of 10, is because sometimes I feel like the advice he gave wasn't 100% realistic for people living life, basically. Like, people aren't going to be able to eat 100% correctly all the time. People can't always cut out things like bread and snacks here and there. Like, there's going to be times where you're going to deviate to that. And this book doesn't really address that. It kind of says, you know, you can't eat bread, you can't have this, you can't do this. Which, like, I get it. It will probably help you lose more weight in the long run, but I just feel like it should give more leeway to it. And I feel like a problem with a lot of these books is that they kind of repeat the same point again and again, which is fine because I get it. They have to make like a substantial book, but at the same time, like, come on, bro, you can get to the point a lot quicker than that. But it's a good book, and I would definitely recommend this book to anyone who wants to lose weight and also improve their nutrition in the long run. Following on the theme of self-help books to help reach my New Year's resolutions, the third book I read this month was Atomic Habits by James Clear. This book is a practical guide on how very small changes in your everyday life can lead to life-altering outcomes by simply implementing a few simple life hacks. But the author basically explains why these work using psychology and neuroscience. This is actually the first book I gave 10 out of 10 to this year. So when it comes to habits, I'm the sort of person that will have good intentions when it comes to them. I want to eat healthier, I want to go on my phone less, I want to work out more, but I never actually end up doing these things no matter how much I want to. And I always thought, oh, is it because I'm lazy? But this book honestly taught me that motivation alone does not help you stick to any type of habit. To help stick to habits long term, you need to have processes in place that will help you do them constantly. And doing these things, as it turns out, is actually really easy. He basically boils it down to 4 laws: making it obvious, making it attractive, making it easy, and making it satisfying. And he basically explains how you can apply these 4 laws to every single setting, whether you want to make good habits or break bad habits. One of my New Year's resolutions this year was to stretch more, and honestly, I have used this 4 laws thing and it has already helped me out so much more, and I've been stretching almost every day. So yeah, I would honestly say that this is a great book, and you can use it in so many instances in your everyday life, and I genuinely think that this is one of those self-help books that is worth the hype, and it is worth for people to read. So yeah, definitely recommend this one. And the very last book that I read in January, and I've actually only just finished reading it, is Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. I won't lie, when I read White Knight, I honestly fell in love with the author's writing style when it came to love. I kind of went on a Dostoevsky spiral. So what better to read than his arguably most famous book, Crime and Punishment? Although when I posted on my Instagram that I was reading this book, a lot of people reached out and was like, are you okay? Are you mentally well? And I get it, because this is a really heavy book and you should proceed with caution, because I can confirm that Dostoevsky is a master of deep diving into your soul and kind of ripping out the most vulnerable and raw parts of yourself. This book is about a destitute and desperate former law student who kind of wanders around the streets of St. Petersburg, and one day he basically commits an act of murder without any remorse or guilt, because he imagines himself to be beyond the conventional moral laws and kind of like allowed to do it. But then he embarks on a dangerous cat and mouse game with a police detective, and then kind of spirals into guilt and remorse and regret when he realizes the gravity of what he's done. And I gave this book an 8 out of 10. God, where do I even begin with this book? It's honestly so much more than just a bloke feeling guilty about a murder. It has such a descriptive yet engaging blend of different commentaries and aspects of life, including philosophy, politics, society, religion, etc., etc., all of which are threaded together to create a really thought-provoking novel. I kind of assumed this whole book was just going to be about him like wallowing in his self-pity and very much like in his head with his own thoughts, which there is a bit of that, but it's also really plot heavy, which I didn't realize. Like, there are some scenes where you're literally so anxious, holding your breath, like trying to figure out if he's going to get caught or not. Like, you're literally like on edge the whole time you're reading, because you're with the character and you have no idea moment to moment if people are going to catch him. And then it's weird because he's then not caught, he then feels even guiltier and kind of spirals into insanity because of this guilt of not having punishment for it. And I love this book so much because I've never seen it before in another piece of literature where it shows the capacity for humans to be evil, but also at the same time that regret and remorse comes from it. And you realize that the real punishment in this book is for the main character to be driven almost insane by this guilt. The only thing that really stopped me giving this book a 10 out of 10 is that there were some parts that dragged on. I mean, it is a big book and perhaps that's my own impatience, but there were some bits I was just like, oh, come on, let's speed this up. Also, something I I really loved about this book is that one of the main characters is called Katerina, and every time I was reading it, I was like, oh my god, that's me. That's my name. Which is a dumb thing to like, but I don't care. I love it. And those are all my January reads. I usually read 5 books per month, but to be honest, because this girl was so big, it took me about 2 weeks to read, so I only read 4. But yeah, a bizarre mix of self-help books and classical Russian literature, but it's fine. I'll embrace it. I hope you enjoyed this video. What books did you read in January? Did you read any self-help books or Russian literature? If you enjoyed this video, please like it down below. It really helps me out. And if you're new here, please subscribe to the channel. I'll see you next time. Bye!